Hello. Welcome back to my channel and my live streams. I have a open conversation going on right now. So if you want to join, there's the link in the chat on the side, wherever it is. I don't know. I don't do this enough to know, but it's there. So you can obviously join and talk about whatever. Um, but yeah, I'm actually a little under the weather. I don't know if you can tell. My voice is a little scraggly. So I do want to do this because I'm trying to be more consistent about whatever I do with this thing on the internet for my own sort of sense of like getting to know what is right for this thing. And I like doing these open conversations, so I've committed to once a month. But I'm going to try to probably make this one shorter. And we've got nobody knocking down my door right now, so this might end up being me rambling for 15 minutes, and that's that. But if you would like to join and have a conversation, happy to have you. Um, yeah. But for now, I guess we'll just sort of give life update. April is crazy. I've realized April will always be crazy for me now. You've got Western Easter and Pascha, and then a bunch of like birthdays and family commitments that I have, and so um, it feels like April was like a social commitment in a way that I have not had a month of social commitments before. So yeah, slowly trying to catch up with my life, but also get rest from all of the things that I've been catching up to. So that's been fun. Um, yeah, dealing with sickness, which is obviously a whole nother level, especially when you're dealing with all the craziness that this brings. And yeah, slowly kind of getting back to this thing. I am going vacation in May, so I'm trying to like get ahead of myself so that I can stay to my commitments uh, for what I want to do uh, with this. Um, I don't know. I might fail. But there's been a lot of like planning and trying to get all those things together. So that's been keeping me busy too. And yeah, uh, that's the Reader's Digest of this month. Been doing a lot of thinking about like online spaces and what we're doing here and having a lot of really good conversations. So I'm excited for those to eventually sort of come out. And I've liked how they've been. I think everything that I've been doing here has been influencing each other, where, these conversations spark things in me that I bring into my one on one conversations that I have with the individuals that I record and release. And then kind of then moving on to the things that I, excuse me, the things that I look to do to talk about more specifically with like the monologue videos and such. And so yeah, they've slowly been sort of influencing each other, but I'm still trying to find that pattern of like what it looks like to create and do these things. I mean, I think this whole online space estuary project, whatever you want to call it, this little corner, it goes by lots of names, lots of branding. It's this huge experiment that we're all trying to figure out. And yeah, I think in the last 6 months, but particularly the last couple months, I've been thinking a lot about, okay, what's what are we doing, and counting the costs of what we're putting out here, and what are the unintended consequences of what we do, and how do we understand what's helpful, what isn't. And this goes outside of just this space and whatever I do here, but like other sort of bigger spaces, bigger brands, bigger movements that happen online, that happen in YouTube, that happen when we're trying to figure out these questions of like what is meaningful, how do we manage those things. And yeah, I don't know, that's been a question I've been struggling with as I have not just put out videos, but like I help put together conferences and try to find ways to support in-person communities and all these things. And yeah, you're you're doing these things with the hope that uh, eventually they're doing something good and they're creating good spaces. Um, but the road to hell paved with the best of intentions. So how do you think about these things well and participate well? And how do you audit yourself, but like your community and the movements that you're part of and the things that you want to put forward and create? And then how is that being affected by the things that you're consuming? And not just the things that you're consuming that you like, but the things that you consume and find successful and, have those struggles with and wrestling with. And yeah, that's been a lot of what I've been thinking about, uh, especially the last month. And I don't, I don't quite know if it's helpful or more debilitating. I tend to lean towards it's being more helpful. um, but yeah, I think we just live in such a different world with the internet and the way that we operate and engage with each other and those things that um, it can lose the fun of like what it is to experiment and try to understand and participate in things differently, and maybe not even differently, but uh, you know, uh, in different spirits or in lost ways of trying to recapture things that you've been able to see. Um, Especially things that happen more naturally in real life, like what I try to do here and why I have these open conversations. I like to uh, kind of recreate the kind of conversations you would have in a coffee shop with a friend or um, in a bar with a stranger, where it's not a bunch of people who've got it all figured out and have expertise in these ideas, but are trying to wrestle with the questions and trying to share the things that they find meaningful, while also trying to share themselves within those things. And it gets trickier the minute you put a camera in front of it and ask people to sit and live stream themselves having a conversation that they don't have any control of, editing or what they say, besides, what happens between your two ears before it goes out of your mouth. And yeah, there's I don't know, there's a whole question of, does that have a place on the internet at all? Like there's a lot of like uh danger that can come with that and seriousness that comes with that. And then, the implications of no longer just being someone in a bar trying to have a conversation with the person you're sitting next to you, but having conversations with people all across the world that maybe you've never met before, never had engagement with, and yet you're like creating these connections. And I think been thinking a lot of these things through this idea of like parasocial relationships, where we watch people and we hear their stories and we understand their ideas or try to understand their ideas and take them in without ever actually knowing them. So there's this weird sort of lopsided perception of feeling like you know a person who presents themselves out to the world without actually knowing them whatsoever. And even that gets a little bit complicated when you look at something like YouTube, where you've got people responding to comments, you've got sort of back and forth going on, where it's not that there is a complete strangeness to the interactions that you're having, where um, no one at all is feeling that like connection and that human interaction, but it's just a different level, and it comes at such different phases. Whether it's just like responding to a YouTube comment or even getting a like on a YouTube comment or a retweet or something, because it doesn't just exist on YouTube, but it gets more complicated when you factor stuff like Discord or open conversations like this, where if you wanted to, you click that link and all of a sudden I'm not talking to myself and just monologuing. All of a sudden, there's that ability to have a back and forth conversation where we can interact and we can hear each other's tones and we can see each other's facial expressions and kind of get that sort of taste of the human experience, even though it's not probably the fullest sense of it. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of those complications that comes with the internet and globalization and the way that we are able to connect with each other. And I don't know. I just feel like it's grown so fast and it's so new that we haven't stopped to fully comprehend the responsibility of what that means and ask those questions. Um, and it's not that we haven't been trying. I think plenty of people have been trying, but maybe it's become so normalized that we stop, like we're like fish in water. We stop to ask. We don't stop to ask about the thing that surrounds us because it's just all we've known. I mean, I've had the internet for most of my life, probably, you know, when I was uh, very young, we didn't really have it, but you know, my dad worked at technology companies, so we had computers and internet before anybody else, and so there's not very much time I remember not having video games or computers or internet access of some kind. And I was lucky enough to have a dad who worked in technology, so there was a lot of that sort of education of like, okay, how do we do this responsibly? Um, but yeah, nowadays, you have a kid, they're born with this stuff. You have 2-year-olds with iPhones and looking at YouTube and creating these parasocial relationships with all different types of people. And we don't know the long-term consequences of those things, how it's going to interact and react in our societies. And it's weird. It's weird being a part of that and recognizing that you have no idea what you're adding to. And yeah, so that's that's a lot of sort of what I've been thinking. If anybody has thoughts or wants to jump in, you can happily click the link. If I don't get anybody in the next couple minutes, I'll probably just call this one a wash and move on with my day. As I said in the beginning, I'm a little under the weather today, so I'm trying to be somewhat consistent with these things, but you know, to my limits. I don't want to push myself, but yeah, if you would like to join and actually have back and forth, you can click the link. If not, you just have a question or want clarification on anything I said, you can happily put a comment. I'll sort of be looking at those on the side. Um, but yeah, that's sort of what I've been thinking. So I'll probably, I don't know. I always feel weird because I don't want to just leave dead space, but I also don't want to just sit and talk to myself because I already do that. If you wanted to sit and listen to me talk to myself, uh, you could listen to my monologues, and oftentimes they're more concise because I'm not just fully going off the top of my head. Um, but yeah, um, yeah. Eventually, I'm going to try to make these conversations, these open conversations, more scheduled and predictable. So if you do want to watch or join, you'll know. I just don't know what that looks like right now. This whole channel is a bit in what would you call it? Local construction mode, where things are moving, but I'm also reworking things and trying to understand the right place and the right pattern of what fits in my life and what I can even give to this in the space of everything else I have in my life. So there'll be ups, there'll be downs, but yeah, the live conversations are something I find to be fun. And if I could find a way to make them more predictable and more uh, workable on my schedule, uh, that's probably what I want to try to do. But yeah, the months that have led up to this moment right now have been so unpredictable that I don't quite know what that looks like. So they'll just be sort of thief in the night things like thief in the night things like this, where I just go. Generally, going to be Mondays because I do think I figured out Mondays are probably the best day to do these things. Um, but how frequently and what time works the best? Um, no clue. So yeah. Um, well, we're at 15 minutes, I think, and that probably means I'm just gonna call this one a wash, shut it down. But thank you to the three people listening. Hopefully, this was somewhat helpful for you, and maybe next time it'll be a little more successful uh, in the conversation partners and the back and forth, and hopefully, I will actually feel a little bit more up to something like this and not so under the weather. So, thanks for listening, and yeah, sorry it didn't work out.